Hi, well, we're back for Module 11. This is managing and controlling our project communications. One thing I want to mention, though, in our last module, we closed with organizational process updates, asset updates. One of them was the stakeholder register, of course, and the other one was the project schedule. I didn't really clarify that. Let me just say that why would you update the project schedule based on your communications plan? Your stakeholders may require certain communications after certain objectives have been reached in your project schedule. So you may need to plug in, say, a milestone or an activity to particularly communicate something at that point with your stakeholder. So that's why your project schedule might be updated as a project document. Actually, I meant project document. So that's why the schedule might be updated. So let's move on now to managing and controlling. Now that we have our plan in place, let's execute the plan under managing, and then again, control it under controlling. So let's look at that. Here it is, 10.2, and we're going to look at 10.3, but 10.2 first, manage it. What is this? Well, it's the process, managing is the process of creating, collecting, distributing, storing, retrieving, and disposition of project information in accordance with, we all should know this by now, the communications plan. So that's our primary input on what it is we're going to manage under the executing process group process of managed communications. Some of the main tools and techniques are communication method, how we're going to do this stuff, and project communications is the output from that. So we're executing the plan and actually creating now the communications. So it's more than just information. Okay, whatever it is, it should ensure that the information is appropriately generated, created in some format that's acceptable to the stakeholders, that it's received by the stakeholder properly, and that you get a response from them. Yes, that looks good, or whatever it may be, but you got to make sure that what you send actually was received, and is there a feedback from that? So that's the basic thing. Did you understand what I sent? Because that's what you wanted. Or they may say that isn't what I wanted, so then you got to go back and fix their stakeholder plan to give them what it is, and the communication plan to get them what they want. Stakeholders are provided the opportunity, because of all these communications, to ask for further clarification of things, for further information, and to discuss what it is you sent them, which is actually the purpose of it, is to make sure that it's clear. And if they need further discussion, go meet with them. That's called stakeholder engagement. We went through that. That's a key thing you need to do. Again, 80–90% of your job is communicate, and mostly with the stakeholders, but not to a lesser degree really with your team itself. So it's all one big interactive, iterative process of communicating. So again, your tools and techniques, we'll talk about in a little more detail later. Again, it's going to now say you're actually going to use those sender-receiver models that you have decided to use in your communication plan. You're going to use the choice of media and particular writing styles and techniques for meeting managements and presentations, facilitation kind of techniques. How are you going to listen? All this stuff is now executed. You're going to do this stuff. That's manage your communication. So here's your ETO diagram. Primary inputs, other than your plan, work performance reports come out from managing and directing the work. They come out there. They're converted. You're able to do performance reporting based on those things and turn them into appropriate project communications. This is kind of the key path through this process. So work performance reports, input through performance reporting, tool technique, into project communications, output, the primary path. And everything else is supporting of it. So here's our data flow diagram. Here we are again, monitor and control project work, performance reports. Again, the only output from performance reports is from 4.4. Other factors and so on come in. Your communication plan is your guiding document. Between those things, you're able to produce the actual project communications to whomever. And again, you may have your usual PM plan updates, project document updates as appropriate. So again, what's in the plan, how you communicate, how you plan for it, how you structure your communications, how you monitor it, how you control things. And now we're talking about how we monitor or manage, actually. Work performance reports, again, that's the collection of performance, project performance information, status information, and that's used to facilitate discussions, create clear communications. Your environmental factors that come to bear, again, your organizational culture, structure, all those things you need to consider, which you hopefully have considered as you created your plan. But now they're actually living, viable things that when you do communicate, you're going to get these cultural things, feedback from people about, is this what I wanted? This is great. I didn't want this. Can you do something else? Culture, whatever. Why are you doing it this way? Somebody may see this and say, why are you doing this way? Well, that's what he wants. That kind of thing. Standards and regulations that may be out there, again, and your project management information system comes in because that will help you distribute this information and gather and distribute it. Organizational assets that you will use to manage your communication, policies, procedures, processes that you may have in your organization again, templates for doing communication management, lessons learned, historical, the usual kind of stuff. And again, don't get tired of this being repeated to you because, again, within the context of managed communication or the context of any process that uses EEFs, OPAs, there are little innuendos about these things that apply only in that context. So that's why some of these look like they're exactly the same. But of course, your policy here for managing communication is different than your policy for creating a scope document. So there are differences, even though they're all policies. But if they're available to you, you should look at them to make sure you're following them properly. So that's your inputs. Now your tools and techniques for managing, actively managing now your real communications. And these are in blue because we've already seen these things because we planned for these and now we are using them. Your communication technology, your communication models and methods. So just to review real quickly, the technology, urgency is a factor. You don't want information to become stale so that it's meaningless to people or could be misconstrued when the situation has changed a day or a week later. You got urgencies, or better yet, maybe timeliness of communications is critical. The availability of technology, how you communicate is in there. The ease of use of the technology you use on both ends is there. Your environment, again, if you're in a dusty, sandy environment, that's different how you communicate the tools you use than if you're in a nice, clean office, with everything there. And of course, sensitivity, confidentiality you have to consider. The communication models, again, the basic one, and all models build off this in some manner, but the basic one is you encode it, and that could be just that you type it in, send it into your email system, and it does, even if it doesn't encrypt it, it wraps it up to send, and we call that encoding, and then it transmits it, unwrapped on the other end, receiver reads it, says, I received this, and by the way, what do you think about this? So it's acknowledged and you get a feedback response. If you as the sender get an acknowledgement and you don't get a feedback, it might be nice if you send them another little short email. Was that okay with you? Do you have any questions? Oh, no, I don't. Then you've fulfilled the communication model. And the methods, again, are interactive. I talked to Bob across here, or even in an email. That's interactive, back and forth. A text, back and forth, interactive. Push is where you receive something because you want it and it just comes to you. And a pull is you say, I want to go get it now, and you push a button and it comes. Otherwise, you wouldn't get it. So that's push-pull. So appropriate in the right situation. So here's your information management system. Again, a little different than your project information management system. This is the overriding system where it does the management and distribution of your project information that could be generated from the records management system of your project management system, and now you use the information management system to actually distribute this information. So hard copy stuff could be part of it. Electronic communications, electronic project management tools that you use are under this too. Your scheduling software, virtual meeting tools, Skype, WebEx, whatever you may want to use that's approved in your plan. Collaborative work management tools, collaborative software where you have a team collaboration kind of database. That's all part of distributing management information or information management. And performance reporting is a tool that you use to compare baseline, your schedule, cost, and time and scope baseline to the actuals that's really happening right now in the real world on your project. So you can look at past performance, you can look at your forecasts, and we'll see tools like particularly earned value management on how you forecast how you're going to be with your budget over time if you continue going the way you're going, where you may have to make corrective actions. Current risks and issues with your stakeholders, performance reporting, and for a period, what is that? Well, work complete this period, work to be completed next period, a summary of all your approved changes and your change log. All this kind of thing is performance reporting. So there's tools you can use. And the outputs of all this are your actual communications, whatever they might be, whatever method they might be. Performance reports, deliverable status reports, schedule progress reports, and of course your cost incurred reports, cost forecast, all that stuff, project communication. And it could go way beyond this too, just meeting agendas you may send out, minutes of meetings to the appropriate people, send out any communications on the project falls here and you need to manage them. Reports are influenced again by the urgency and the impact they would have, how you deliver it, and of course confidentiality. That's all project communications. Your project management plan updates, your baseline updates if you have to update your baseline because you have poor project performance, or maybe you can even bring it back in earlier because you have good project performance. That'd be a great thing. But you measure that against what's called your performance measurement baseline. And we'll get to that, what that actually is, later on in scope. But here's a little preview. The approved project work plan, when we get to it, is the total of the planned value of your project to date, including any management reserves. Now maybe that doesn't make sense to you right now, it will later, but that's, all the money that you have, your planned value over time on your project, you can report progress against that and deviations from it. But that baseline is your project management baseline. The project execution that you're doing actually is compared to that, so you get your forecasts. Deviations from that are measured. It integrates your triple constraint, your scope, time, and cost, and also includes quality in measuring deviations and so on. And it might be the cause for you to update some of the baselines through integrated change control, of course. So performance measurement baseline is a big thing, and we'll get to that when we get to scope. Project documents, your issue log may be updated because you're managing now. You may have to deal with your stakeholder and change some things. Project schedule may get updated again because they may need something at a certain time, like I mentioned earlier. Project funding requirements may change because of communications. They say, well, we need to do this earlier. Okay, funding changes. OPA updates, stakeholder communications, go into your repository, project reports, presentations, all your project records, stakeholder feedback, lessons learned, all go into your update, into your project, your organizational process assets. So managing communications. So we're going to come back, and now we're going to talk about the third and last process in communication management, which is controlling now your communications. Okay, well now we're back with project communication management knowledge area. Our last process in that knowledge area is controlling communications. Now that we have our plan, we've actually done our communications, or ongoing doing our communications under manage. Now we're going to control that to keep it within the plan. Here's some key stuff here in the ETO diagram. Notice the blue, the issue log, comes in primarily through expert judgment and meetings, supported by perhaps the information management system, end up with change requests. Because now we're controlling. You might recall, or maybe you didn't realize, that under managed communication prior, there were no change requests because we're doing things. Okay, we're actually creating the communications and publishing them and all that stuff. Now the fallout from that may be that we need to make a change, and that is this, control. That's why the change request is an output here and not prior. Also, work performance data that comes in from various other knowledge areas, not just communications, but other areas, comes in, goes again into your management system perhaps, but certainly expert judgment and meetings will look at that data, and they'll turn that into meaningful information that can be used further out. So these are the two things, issue log, change request, their data into information, and the objective of this whole thing is to still ensure that your stakeholders are getting the information that they need and really nothing more and nothing less. Here's our data flow. Here's 10.3 here. The main input is the actual communications that we issue according to our stakeholder register, according to our communication plan, the various people, supported by the project management plan. Outputs of this would be updates to the project management plan. Here's your more progressive elaboration going at play here. We're doing the work over here. We're executing the work breakdown schedule. And so here's work performance data coming in there. We're still talking, always talking to stakeholders. So here come issue logs in there, which may affect that. I mean, he may get some communication, since we're talking communication context here, he or she may say, boy, I don't like what I'm seeing. I'd rather see this. Okay, that's an issue. You bring it in here, you fix it. You update your project documents, which are your stakeholder register. You put that in there, and you move on. The outputs, here's your change request into one place, perform integrated change control, and work performance information that's now actionable stuff goes into monitor and control, so they can deal with that actionable stuff, make changes, and of course change requests come out of there if they actually need to make a change. So that's the data flow diagram. Inputs, the PM plan, of course your stakeholder communication requirements are key to communications. The plan shows you why these communications are necessary. Again, they have to have value. The time frame, the frequency, who's responsible, who receives, all that's in your project management plan. Actually in the subsidiary plan of stakeholder communications plan. Okay. Project communications themselves come in. By coming in, I mean they are inputs. I mean they go out to whoever they go to, but that whole thing you need to consider as an input to control. So here they are, multiple sources, deliverable status, schedule, progress, costs incurred, many other different kinds of communications. Whatever it is, you need to consider, do you need to control this better, or are things going smoothly? So no control necessary. Your issue log from the stakeholders, again, they may have good or not so good comments or responses to the communications they receive, so you need to deal with that. Documents, monitor resolution of issues, your issue log is a repository for, what's happened. Here's the issue. Here's who's responsible for resolving it. Here's when they got to resolve it. Here's how they resolve it. That's the, what's already happened. You got a log of that. And what subsequent communications need to be delivered. Like I say, they say, well, I need more than this now. Okay. Or I need less than this now. You need to make some changes. Work performance data, raw data to be organized, summarized, primarily for your performance management baseline, so you can do your forecasting from the aggregate of all your baselines. How are you doing? You on track, you off track, you like fall off the edge over here, it's become real apparent, or you're just kind of off track. Let's make some corrections, would result in a change request, which we'll see. Your organizational process assets, again, you can get reporting templates, your communication policies, standards, procedures, available technologies in your organization. What can you use? Maybe you can't use your cell phone in the company. Your project, and again, that's dangerous to have you in your project at least communicating instructions to people via the phone unless it's authorized that you do that. And maybe you need to print out these communications and put them in the log. If that's the requirement, that's what you got to do. If they say you can't do that with a phone, then you can't use the phone to do communications. What's the allowable media, retention, records retention, how long do you keep information, that's information that your organization may require. And of course, security requirements, do you need to encrypt things, certain things, everything, whatever. Your organization may require some of this stuff, that's why it's a process asset. Or a prior project may require encryption of stuff, and you see that, and you may then want to adopt that to your own project. So, requirements analysis. This is from 10.1. I want to just repeat this just to show, again, that every piece of information that is communicated to somebody has to have value to them, or don't give it to them unless they ask for it. Okay. And then even if they ask for it, you should do due diligence and say, well, really, why do you need this? How will this help you? If it'll help you, I'll give it to you. Otherwise, let's not burden you with it. Just give you the core stuff that you really need. So you need to figure out what is really value, and that may change over time. Tools and techniques. Here we have the information management system as a tool you can use to control your communications. It's not your project management information system directly. It's a piece of it. It manages, captures, stores, distributes all sorts of information, cost, schedule, performance information produced by your project management information system. It's the engine that now sends all that stuff around, primarily to stakeholders. And it does automation. It can consolidate reports, distribute stuff the way you want it. So maybe your life is easier because all these complex communication needs of your stakeholders can be managed, by configuring your information system properly, so it just does things, automatically. Otherwise, you may have to do it manually, a bigger burden. And of course, it facilitates the distribution of whatever it is, spreadsheets, presentations, database, table, whatever it is you need. An automated system would certainly help you with that. Now, short of that, here's another comparison of these two things. Your project management information system is used to gather, integrate, and disseminate the outputs of your processes. Whatever information is there, it'll help you do that. It's used to support all aspects of project from initiating to closing, and it can be manual or hopefully automated. Now, that differs a bit from the IMS, the information management system, which is used to collect, store, and distribute this information between the people that produce the information and the people that want the information. So it is the engine that sends all this stuff out physically or in electronic format of the information produced by your project management information system. So we saw that before. And then on top of that whole thing is your organization's reporting system, sort of the umbrella that encompasses everything. So you'll see these throughout PMBOK. Don't get them confused. Understand which is which. Expert judgment. Call on people. Say, what do you think about this? What do you think the impact of doing this is? The stakeholder wants it. What do you think? Because you have experience in this. What do you think? And they'll tell you, and you can make a decision, informed decision. You may need an expert to intervene for you if things start getting wild and you just don't understand why somebody wants something. You don't think they need it. Have an expert help you, go with you, or speak to the stakeholders. Come on. Maybe they're at that level where they can talk senior manager to senior manager. Come on, Bob. You don't need this stuff. You say, well, all right, I thought it'd be nice, but it's not going to help you in your job. Don't worry about it. You can have an expert facilitate for you and help you out if you can't get it done yourself. Technical management communication details can help the experts say, well, the best way to do this with that job site over there is to do it this way. I did it on my last job, worked great. Okay, whatever, get help. Meetings. Use your meetings to determine as a group consensuses for best approach to how to communicate your project performance, how you consider and resolve your stakeholder issues, because they're going to ask you for new information. And again, you don't want to be overburdened. You don't want to become just an information machine, but you do want to be the machine that gives them the proper stuff. So you have meetings to decide, well, they want this now. What do you all think? Decide and move on. Again, meetings face-to-face, could be online, could be however. And it could include suppliers external to your company too. You could have meetings with them because they need information too to some extent, so you got to deal with the meetings. So we're going to come back here in a minute. We're going to talk about now, given all this information and the tools we have, how are we going to actually now produce our outputs and satisfy control communications. We'll be back. Okay, so here's the outputs from the control communications process. Work performance information, change requests, and are ubiquitous in their own context. PM plan updates, project document updates, and OPAs. No EEFs here, by the way. Work performance information that we generate through our tools and techniques, given the work performance data that came in. We're able to summarize the performance data that we've gathered, summarize it, consolidate it, turn it into information, and we do that to the level that's required by the stakeholders. Some may need more details than others based on work performance of the project, depending on their interest and their stake in the job overall. So we customize it and give them what they need and only what they need. And then it's communicated to our stakeholders through, how do we communicate this stuff now that we've done all this? We do it through 10.2, manage communications with the output of project communications. That is the actual work done, executed project communication, we're communicating. Okay, so here we do the information and we deal with it through manage. Change requests are a natural output of any of the control functions, communications or whatever it might be, any of the other knowledge areas, because change requests are change to bring things back on track. So you could have a new change request, you could update a change request if you need to. Remember, there is corrective action, preventative action, defect repair for sure are the major change request types. And remember, we had those two oddball ones that are just for some reason in there, update and enhancement change request. So here's the one that is in particular, it cites update. So it says when you're doing control communications, you may have a change request to update things, maybe to update cost estimates, activity sequences, schedule dates, resource requirements, risk response that we'll get to later, how you do that. So to update those things, you'd use a change request. Now that's different than corrective action, preventative, or defect repair. So it may be actually a fourth official type, but again, if you get a question like this on the PMP exam, just read the question in its own context and then decide, what they're talking about as far as change requests, and I'm sure you'll be fine there, as long as you realize that there could be 5 different types they talk about, because they do mention them all, even though update and enhancement change requests are only mentioned one and the other 2 times versus 9 or 10 times for the other. So a little odd, but maybe it's a very special change request, so just keep in mind that those exist. So change requests can also obviously be updates to your PM plan if you have to change any of the subsidiary plans or any of the baselines, which may happen because you're controlling communications. You may have to change some of those aspects. And of course, change requests could have recommendations for corrective action and preventative control based on the inputs that you have in dealing with communications. Your PM plan updates, again, specifically, most likely would be to your communication management plan, stakeholder management plan, and the human resource management plan, because they're all receivers and generators of information and questions, and these are the how-to you do these things. Over time, your project may change its approach with certain stakeholders, so you need to update your plans to document that. And of course, if at that point in time you update these plans, the next project would look at this and see the latest incarnation of these plans and consider that as the best practice at that point in time, so they would not have to waste their time doing something that's less effective, less efficient, and then finding out later that they should have done this in the first place. So they have this information at hand. That's the value of your historical information and lessons learned. Project documents that may get updated from controlling your communication. Of course, your forecasts that you send out are project documents. Performance reports and the issue log itself is a project document, and it may get updated as your stakeholders say, I'd rather see this, what do you think, and you got to deal with it. So your log again is the issue, who's responsible to resolve it, when, and then what the resolution was. That's why you need to file that away as a project document, keep it updated. Organizationally, again, as you control your communications, you need to consider report formats that are out there in your organization that they prefer to see. You need to consider those, and again, lessons learned, always review those, and they'll be part of your historical database. It says may become, well, actually they will become part of your organization's historical database when your project's over. And the causes of issues would be there, how you resolve them would be in there. So good stuff to have when you control your communications. So that is the manage communications knowledge area. It's three processes, and we're done with that now. So now that we've gotten our charter, our project management plan is getting filled out, we've identified our stakeholders, we have a plan in place to communicate with them, we've created our project team, we know how we're going to manage them and update them and reward them and train them and keep them skilled and all that stuff. Now that we've done that, now finally, and in the real world it should be, now finally we're going to go to the stakeholder and start to refine what their requirements really are. All we have is the project charter right now, which is high level stuff. I want this kind of thing, grandiose thing, I want it delivered in 8 months. Well, now what exactly is that? And I mean, what exactly is that? Because that's going to be your baseline. You're going to build that. You're not going to stop unless that baseline changes. So you need to know your exact requirements. Because even if it's baseline and you build it exactly like that, if you haven't gotten enough information from your stakeholder and you haven't communicated regularly with them, in the end you're going to deliver something that may be built perfectly, but say, I didn't want that. And by the way, there's a metric out there in the project management world that says when you do, and this is in particular the software development, when you do an application program for somebody, the statistic is nearly 40% or more of the functionality that is finally delivered to the client is never ever used. So there's your resource, your time, your cost down the tube because you did not refine your scope properly. You could have saved all that money and put it into a better product of the other 60 or 50%. So keep that in mind. You can really be embarrassed in the end when they say, that's great, I don't know why you did that, don't need it, we'll use this part. Give me half my money back because you spent it and you didn't need to. So you got to avoid that at all costs. So now, scope management, how we plan for it, and in particular, how 5.2, how we collect the requirements so that we can start actually then building something that the client really wants. So that's what we're going to do, and we're going to start doing that in Module 12 next time.